Okay, so we're trying to find the minimum, and it's prompting us for the left bound. So we're going to use the left arrow to go over to the left side of that lowest point. And I just have to make sure I'm on the left side. And I hit enter. And then it prompts me for the right bound, so I'll go over to the right side. And I'll hit enter. And then I'll double check. Do I have kissing arrows? Yes, I do. So I hit enter. And there's my min.
What? I got negative 99999.
Okay, what would negative 0.9999999 round to?
1.
Negative 1.
But that's different.
And that it is different. You know why it's different? Because of the pixelation of the calculators.
Oh, so
Okay? And also, if we don't put our left bound and right bound in exactly the same position, ours might be off by a tiniest of little bits. It says tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000. They're off by very little. 2 millions. They're different by 2 millions.
That's fast.
Yours is doing the same thing. This is 0.9 repeated, so it's going to round to. So if we round to the nearest hundredth, all of ours will round correctly. So that's what we'll do. We'll round these to 2 decimal places. And when we round to the nearest hundredth, we'll get the same thing. Did you do second trace? It's off the graph. Choice 3. And then you just make sure you're on the left side. And you make sure you're on the right side. And then you hit it.
That we think it is, and then go towards 0 when we go the other direction. That's why I'm gonna get that number. Do you know what I mean?
I do. We'll do that on the next one.
What I'm saying is, like, can you do that to
Dude,
find out, or like, give me
I'm
different
so
answers?
good at this.
If you don't use the minimum button, it will give you
No,
different.
but, like, I use that for like when I'm on the graph doing the arrows, like the one that goes
You don't have
to
to
the
put,
left.
you just put the
I went towards the negative
Y
1,
value.
and then when I went to the right, I went towards 0. Is that what you do?
Yeah, yeah.
Like go to the point and then
Go
go
left,
to 0.
and then go right. Yeah.
You have to put the X and the Y?
Yes.
So it's the point that it is 0.
Find the minimum.
Sure.
Like on my couch.
Yes. Can I do it with the next problem? Yeah, we'll do it with the next one. Okay, so this is what we should have gotten. I'll come sit with you and make sure you got it on the next one. All right, so we're looking at all polynomial functions right now. And so the first thing it's asking us is for the domain. That's our input. That's our x values. What are all the possible values for x? Well, there's no restrictions. And I can tell it on the graph. Because this graph, it keeps going left forever, and it keeps going right forever. There's no holes, there's no gaps, it's continuous. So the domain for this function is what? Yes, it is. Negative infinity to positive infinity. There are no values for x that are excluded. We can plug any value of x into this function.
Did it always need to be fucking
For polynomial functions, it is. The only time there would be a restriction on a polynomial function is if it were in context of a word problem. Like when we did links, dimensions, could they ever be negative? No. So we'd have to put a restriction. But in just terms of a regular polynomial function, the domain will always be from negative infinity to positive infinity. Now we just found the minimum, so we have a minimum at the point negative 1, negative 1. Now, is this the absolute lowest point on the graph? We actually call that an absolute min. Okay, we're going to look at one in just a minute that is lower than the points around it, but it's not the absolute lowest point on the graph. And in that case, instead of calling it absolute, we would label that as relative or local. And we'll look at one of those in just a second. Now, maximum, because this function goes up forever, it doesn't have a stopping point. There is no maximum. We had a lowest point, but we don't have a highest point because it goes up forever. Now, range, those are our y values of the function, our output. Do you see that this is my lowest y value, and then it goes up forever? And the value of y right here, that is the point, -1, 1, -1, -1. So the range starts at -1, and then it goes up forever. Positive infinity. You don't need the positive sign, just infinity. Okay, now, probably you were given some leeway a little bit last year with brackets and parentheses, and this is where I'll start getting nitpicky about it. We need to include the -1 because that is a point on the graph. And the way we show we include the -1 is by using the bracket. Excuse me, the brace. This is a brace. Okay? And then it goes to infinity. Now, we cannot include infinity. We can't contain infinity. We can't get to infinity. Infinity is an idea. It's not a number. So infinity always has to have parentheses around it. Because it represents a concept that if you think about too hard, it'll give you a headache. Does that make sense? Okay. Alright, everybody graph this one, and this one's going to open down. We know it's going to open down before we graphed it, because we've already dealt with this function. It's even degree and negative leading coefficient, so it's going to open down. So instead of having a min, this one has a max. Let's see if you can find that max. Calculators.
I did, but I have half of it. No, I did.
And this time, because it's
Like, I told him Monday what I did.
And like this food.
What do you say?
Make sure you're on the left side.
And what?
He didn't have it. He said, my dad
Like
texted me this morning.
all like
And my dad said he was letting me explain how I did it. And it's like, you kind of knew or something. So he already knew.
you need this stuff.
So he was mad
You need
because
to
I
know
got
the character
a
traits.
You know he's gonna be giving speeches. I was surprised he hasn't now that I think about it. About not doing that.
I thought like for sure yesterday, like, especially after Johnny, which Johnny's really good and all.
Yeah.
Like I thought especially he would say something yesterday.
Well, last year's disaster.
Yeah, he told me about that. I already knew about that too, because Carson told me that's how he started.
Yeah.
It's like Philip was supposed to play, but Philip didn't show up because he was at the game.
I wish I took environmental science.
Philip Paul.
No, he didn't show up like for the Wednesday practice. Because he was at the game.
Make sure we're on the right.
Didn't Carson do like a game-winning pick six or something?
It was. They had the score, and we're going for 2-1.
No, literally. Bridget, why do you have anxiety? Because I'm procrastinating. Well, I looked at Emory, and then I'm
As a
looking
freshman.
at South Carolina. Major architecture.
Right, so.
And I
Alright, let's do second counter again. And this is a maximum, so it's 4. Now, go to the left side of the hump. It doesn't matter.
I mean, that's
That's
awesome.
good.
Like, I'd consider that.
Enter. Now go over to the right side of the hump. Good. Enter, and hit enter for guess.
Oh.
There you go. It rounds to the same thing mine does. 0.25, 0.125.
So it doesn't like matter how far you go over left or right.
No, you just gotta be, make sure you're on the left, make sure you're on the right. Are you a righty or a lefty?
Right.
Alright. How about you pay attention, play with the calculator, and print out the notes.
Range is bottom to the top, so it's negative infinity to whatever your maximum is.
I'm sorry.
Well, your maximum is 0.5 or 0.1.
How long you gonna be in that thing?
I don't know, like, I gotta go back every week to get a new one because like it smells so bad when I'm practicing. And so I know at least like 2 weeks, but it's probably longer.
I haven't had a surgery in last year. Jeff Green was my last one.
I'm very much
Right, this test is really hard when a student tells you the wrong thing.
Oh.
And you have to write it down on a piece of paper for them. And you wanna go, think about that one? Try something more different. I was supposed to.
That would be
Actually, they're just right.
My brother's prep school. There's a good one. It's like called like Star
There's no
Wars.
minimum?
No.
So like you just don't, right?
Really like
Empty.
I mean, you have like a.
Okay, so this function has a maximum, but it does not have a minimum, does it? Because it goes down forever. There's no min on this one. So when we go to list the domain of every quadratic, and all of our polynomial functions will always be from negative infinity to positive infinity. Min, this one doesn't have a min. Nothing. But this one does have a max. And it is an absolute max. The absolute max occurs at the point, that's supposed to be an at symbol. Try again. There we go. That point is positive 0.25, 0.125.
I already did the.
I just realized there's no minimum.
Alright, show me.
Honestly, I didn't actually pay attention to that. Like, whenever
Okay, guys, with left.
the college is all serious, like,
Yes.
once you go
They're always on the left.
we got like a 3.6 right now.
So go further. You gotta make sure you're on the left side.
Like this semester.
No, this is in high school.
That's right. Make sure you're on the right side.
And
So
get
I'm
the
just
big
gonna put
Go a little
myself.
further.
If I can keep a 3, 4, 3, 5 this semester, and then next semester I'm trading SAT Pro, which I have a B in weight training.
Okay. Alright, go ahead and grab the third one, guys. Oh, range, sorry, range.
pretty good.
Alright, this one goes down forever, so it goes from negative infinity up to this highest y value, which is your max, 0.125. Okay, so absolute max or mins, absolute will be part of your range. Relative will not. So let's look at some relatives. Graph number 3. Please. Or the third one.
Bless you.
What is the equation?
X cubed minus X.
X to the third minus X. Alright, so when you look at your graph, it looks like this. And it's a little hard to tell what's going on. So if you want to investigate closer, what we do is hit the zoom button. We hit zoom N. So zoom 2, and then enter. And once you hit enter, you'll get a better look. Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of the ones that doesn't have a max on.
Okay. Do you see that this one has a relative max and a relative min? They are not absolute. Odd degree functions either go up and down forever, no matter which way it goes. So they will have no absolutes. Odd degree functions won't have absolutes, but they can have relatives or local. Both those words mean the same thing. So relative to the points around it, this one's higher. It's a relative max. Relative to the points around it, this one's lower. It's a relative min. So this one has both a max and a min, but they're relatives. Let's see if you can find them.
My calculator's freaking out.
It just gave me.
That's the function we plugged in when we didn't get the sheets off the table.
It likes it when I'm pushing the graph button. Zoom in.
I don't know.
Zoom. Two. Zoom is like that.
Oh, relative.
See how like
Regular.
it's not regular, so when I say points
You
are
know,
going higher.
relative, minimum,
Yeah,
and
so that means
maximum.
it's relative, but like
The local.
on this one,
Relative.
it was like this, and so this
So I
was
should erase this.
Yeah, we got some stuff.
It's like,
So technically I was right.
the lowest. Like, for example, like this, that's like the relative because that's
Okay.
This thing?
Second, trace. Oh, yours isn't, yeah, yours isn't follow then. Oh, yours is really mad. It won't even cut off. Thought I was gonna take batteries out for a second.
I don't know what it was doing.
Let's see, you want to do the second one? So, trace,
Yeah, it's not take it back.
and then
Yeah.
oh, and then you need to go to that. Like stay on the center of that. Yeah.
Alright, I don't know what I was doing. It's fine now. So zoom two, just hit enter.
Relative max are on the
And now you can find them.
Now I go second
Second,
trace.
trace.
Man, for number 3.
Six.
I'm just negative 1.
No.
Why didn't you do 0.6?
Oh, I know what you're doing.
Negative point.
You could. Or Jim. Calculation.
No.
Sure.
Just do two groups.
She looks confused.
So we're gonna do.
Oh,
Okay, which one did you do? Three?
Wait, is that-
Okay, so that's one. She's gonna come over here. Just to the left side and then hit enter. Go over to the right side, right side of the valley. Hit enter. There you go. There's your minimum. That point right there. Hit that.
And how would I write that?
You
Point
can check it.
58,
Oh, what's
comma,
Okay.
like, order of zeros, so 0.58, comma, negative 0.38.
I was right there.
0.58, comma,
Right.
yes, negative 0.38.
So, so what if we don't, like, what if, like, our answer is not exact, but it's, like, close? Cause, like, doesn't it depend where you press enter on the graph?
They will all round to the exact same hundredths place. No matter what graphing calculator you use. They'll all round to the same hundredths place. So, alright, so this one has a relative min. And the relative min occurs at 0.58, negative 0.38. And it also has a relative max.
Yeah, it does.
And it occurs at negative 0.58, positive 0.38. Now, your wheels are spinning. I know. You're like, ooh, they're always opposites. No, they're not. They're not always opposites. This one is, because what kind of symmetry does this function have? Odd symmetry. That's going to happen when it has odd symmetry. That's the only time it's going to happen. Okay? So the domain, it goes forever left, forever right. Range. Let's look. It goes down forever and up forever. So the range is also negative infinity to positive infinity. That is our domain and range for any odd degree function. Okay, let's skip to k of x. Let's skip to k of x. The graph is going to be my favorite. It's going to be the W. Graph k of x. Okay, so.
We're doing the K instead of the number 4.
Yeah, we're skipping number 4. I got the answers. If you've worked ahead and want to check, I've got the answers to that.
You have 2 relative minimums.
Let's talk about that. Are they relative? Are they absolute?
I'm sorry, absolute. Are they the same?
Oh.
If they're not,
I like this one as well.
So you only need 1.
my watch tells me to move all the time during the period. She thinks I sit too much. I do.
What? It would think I said too much to football.
Yeah.
Then it would say you walk too much.
Let's talk about what that means. Yes. Okay.
You didn't.
You got negative 1.7
She got the same.
to the negative 6.
She got the same.
All right.
Look at
Something. 1.5. Okay. Doesn't matter. Because whenever we have e to a negative something, isn't that scientific notation? And doesn't this tell us to move our decimal
Miss Willoughby.
6 places
Miss Willoughby.
to the left?
You didn't put the negative.
No, I just didn't.
Okay? Now, if I move it 6 places, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I round it to the nearest hundredths place, which is what I've asked you to do, isn't that 0? Now, those of you that didn't get this for the relative max, didn't your x value round to 0? They will all round to 0. So be careful. Look for this, guys. This e to a negative something tells me it is 0. That's scientific notation. Now, on this one, this gives us the absolute minimum value of the function. And so the absolute minimum value of the function is negative 2.25. But it occurs at 2 different points, doesn't it? It occurs at the point negative 1.58, negative 2.25, and that minimum value of the function occurs again at positive 1.58, negative 2.25. So is it possible to have 2 absolutes? Well, we actually have one absolute value of the function, negative 2.25, but it occurs at 2 places. Does that make sense?
You didn't put the negative. The equation.
I didn't put a negative where?
The equation. There's a negative for it.
No, that's L of x. I'm doing K of x.
Well.
Okay. Alright, so the domain is from negative infinity to positive infinity, but the range, this has a lowest y value. So it starts at negative 2.25 and it goes to infinity.
Miss Willoughby, on my max, Mom did did it wrong. Like the first time I did it,
Okay, because it's even -6, this rounds to 0. So that's 0 total. Anytime we have any to a negative number, it's gonna round to 0.
Anything rounded to?
Because that -6, just like it here, your -6 tells you to move the decimal 6 places to the left, which would make it round to 0.
So it doesn't matter what's in front of the E.
Not really.
She's intimidating.
Okay, so your homework's out of your textbook. I'm giving you permission to take your phones back out and take a picture of this if you don't have your textbook and you'd rather take a picture.
Woo! Done with all my classes. Boy, I'm
So she was probably just tired of me. When'd you go there?
It's third time for charm.
third time.
This is Miss Lovey. Sure. Okay, bye. Ansley, you need to go see Miss Dillon at the office. You know who that is? Dillon's in the front office. Like you go past that front desk, you go straight down that hall. She's right there on the right before you get to that.
Like a really,
It's like what it
it's
is.
like open space area.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Like after class, like the system principal, it's like open. Yeah. Area.
It's where the conference is.
Oh, dude,
Guys, you do not have to complete the chart. Just do this. You do not have to complete the chart. I picked the ones I wanted to do.
This room, I have 6 A's.
I have just been one.
6 A's.
6 A's.
Let me enter your last.
That's my only A.
Which is, I'm short.
No, I can have a response.
I was literally had
You know what I'm going. I've never had an A.
They're not graded, but they will be tomorrow. All right, so tomorrow you get your test back. We'll talk about test retakes. For those of you that might qualify, you made less than a 70%. You want a chance to earn a 70%. What do you have to do?
Oh, we gotta make it up.
You have to score.